U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site.
He talks about it like it's a hurricane. It's just hit the place, and he's going in there to really take care of those poor Palestinians. Well, hold on, you're standing next to the guy who did all of that destruction, and it's your unexploded bombs.
It's all hypocrisy, and it's a sanitization of evil in these kind of banal tech bro speak, which is just appalling.
He knows that this is deeply wrong. He doesn't have that bravado and gusto that he often has. With this, he's embarrassed. He knows that this is ethnic cleansing.
So this is actually an artificial unity funded and supported by a huge number of dollars from the Israel lobby. And the so-called Judeo-Christian unity, which was always a myth, is going to be exposed as a myth, and it's going to crumble. Elon Musk and Donald Trump have bragged about cutting government spending, but there's one department they refuse to cut spending to. This department has received $310 billion since its founding, and Trump just approved $8 billion in sales to it. That department, ladies and gentlemen, is the state of Israel, the 51st state, and Trump has declared that it is exempt from all cuts to foreign aid. Now, in this video, we're going to walk you through that, but we're going to do more than this. We're going to tell you how Trump's policy of making Israel great again is going to make America fail, and how these events may lead to a second Arab Spring. Brother Tahir, why don't you talk us through what Elon Musk has been bragging about recently?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a graph which shows the funding received by Israel from the United States from 1946 to 2004, and as you can see, it blows everyone else away. Over 300 billion. The closest after that is just over 150 billion by Egypt. So it receives at least double the amount given to the second biggest spend of foreign aid.
And most of it is on military, but a lot of it is economic. So there's a huge amount of money. And have we got anything more recent? Is there any kind of graph of the military spending?
So this is the military spending in more, separated, and shows you, look at how that military spending basically zooms up in 2024, basically since October 7th, 2023.
Right. So in what the ICJ and the ICC are saying is very plausibly a genocide, America's military aid for Israel has shot right up. And I mean, I don't think we should be surprised by this, because even with Donald Trump, people thought Donald Trump was going to be the person who stops wars abroad, right? That's kind of what he ran on. Last time and this time, we're not going to overthrow foreign leaders. He tried with Venezuela and failed in his first term. And we're not going to get embroiled in the Middle East. We're not going to start new wars. And within weeks, he's talking about, basically supporting Israel to the hilt, and moving all the Gazans out of Gaza and putting them in other countries.
Well, ethnically cleansing the land.
Absolutely. And he's even said that if Hamas actually, the news was today as we're filming, Hamas said that, they're not going to release any more hostages because of this kind of policy and these statements. And he said, we're going to make it like a living hell for them. So basically he's talking about declaring war on them. So, I mean, Trump seems to be betraying his base.
Absolutely.
And a lot of his base in doing these things. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to push comes to shove. Eventually the MAGA base is going to realize that they're going to have to cut the Zionists loose to be able to focus on the white working class Americans. And it's going to be a, WASPs versus Zionists.
What does WASPs mean?
So white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, it's going to be the WASPs versus the Zionists at some point.
Right.
And Trump is a fool if he thinks that the Zionists are going to be able to bail him out of that problem, because the WASPs are his base.
Right.
Okay, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants are his base.
So you're saying that at a certain point, the Christian Zionists may need to, there'll be an ultimatum, do we keep our Zionism or not? And if they feel like the support for the Zionists abroad, Israel, is actually harming them, they're going to cut the Zionists loose?
You just need to look at the two biggest kind of Christian podcasters in the world, Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. They're both against giving funding to Israel. Okay, that's at the beginning of the Trump presidency. You give it a few years and you're going to see, them shifting the narrative in the Overton window with respect to this issue for Americans.
I think they already are. But Trump, to an extent, can be said to be already completely trapped and beholden by the Zionists, because the Zionist lobbyists, because of his funding. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about Trump's funding, which some people know, but some people don't know?
Yeah, so have a look at this. Miriam Adelson gives $100 million to the Trump campaign, making good on reported pledge.
Right.
That's a pretty shocking amount of money.
Yeah.
Miriam and Sheldon would come into the White House probably almost more than anybody outside of people that work there. And they were always after, and as soon as I'd give them something, always for Israel, as soon as I'd give them something, they'd want something else. I said, give me a couple of weeks, will you please? But I gave them the Golan Heights, and they never even asked for it.
So basically, America spends and just goes back. Goes back.
Yeah.
And it's funny, AIPAC have been accused of effectively spending the money they received from the United States on tightening the leash on America. And this is a good example of
Well, it's all a self-serving system, because even if you look at the money that America sends to Israel, it's primarily to go back and buy US munitions and US weapons of war. So it's this big self-serving system which is win-win for America and Israel, but it's a loss for the actual people on the ground, the Palestinians. Potentially, at least 50,000,
and for the Israelis,
potentially many more have died.
It's a loss for the Israelis as well, because in a way you could argue it's a greater loss from a spiritual and a moral perspective for the Israelis, because they have, developed this kind of siege mentality, and they have, through their militarism, have degenerated the moral fiber of their society by dehumanizing other human beings. And when you look at it from the moral and spiritual perspective, the harm to them is far greater.
And even from a perspective of legacy, they are tarnishing the, I don't know if you want to call it the sacrifices, but they're tarnishing what happened to their forebears in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And they're then running with a similar type of mentality and perpetrating it upon the Palestinians.
Yeah.
So it's a betrayal of their own history, their own recent history, which they use to justify these very crimes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, let's go and talk about Trump's plan. So we've got a video here, which where Trump, it's a snippet which shows what Trump has been saying. So let's have a quick watch of that.
Yeah.
They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site. Level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
What was your initial reaction to that?
Well, he talks about it like it's a hurricane, and this just hit the place, and he's going in there to really take care of those poor Palestinians, and he's going to clean up their house for them, and then make them feel real comfortable somewhere else. Yeah. And it's like, well, hold on, you're standing next to the guy who did all of that destruction, and it's your unexploded bombs that you funded, and that you gave to them to do, and which you gave them political cover in the UN. And diplomatic cover and journalistic cover through all of your media outlets. So this is like the arsonist
I was just thinking
burning down the house.
Yeah, exactly.
And then coming along and with a fire extinguisher and saying, well, I better do a good deed here.
No, it's saying, well, the residents are waiting to come back in. He's saying, well, we're going to have to clean this up. We're going to do a really good job. You're going to have to go somewhere else and we'll keep this. Yeah. That's basically what he's saying. Yeah. I was surprised how brazen he was. I wasn't surprised that he supported Israel, but I was surprised at how brazen the plan was.
I'll be honest with you. If you look at Trump carefully, I personally can see in him that he knows that this is deeply wrong, and that he doesn't have that bravado and gusto and that confidence that he often has with his policies that he's convinced about. With this, he's embarrassed. He's actually ashamed. And
he's talking around it.
And he's trying to depict it in a manner whereby he's doing some great goodness for people. And a beneficence. Because he knows very well that this is ethnic cleansing, and this idea that, they can't go back to the land because it's a demolition site. That's not why they can't go back to the land. They can't go back to the land because Israel will have occupied it by then. And his plan to
it like it's a descriptive analysis, it's actually a statement of intent. They're the ones who are saying that it can't go back.
Yes, exactly.
They're saying you can't go back. Yeah. But they're standing back and say, well, they can't go back because we're forcing them out.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
People will think that, some people say that this is just Trump kind of riffing, and they're saying Netanyahu was surprised.
This is clearly scripted.
This is policy.
This is policy. And there's good evidence of that. And the evidence is Jared Kushner. So this is Jared Kushner. This is talking.
This was like, I think, spring 2024. This was like mid 2024, roughly.
That's correct. It was a bit ago, and this is this is his son-in-law. Don't forget, he's big in the real estate business with Trump, and this is him talking about what they're going to do and how valuable Gaza is to them.
Gaza's waterfront property. It could be very valuable to if people would focus on kind of building up, livelihoods. You think about all the money that's gone into this tunnel network and into all the munitions. If that would have gone into education or innovation, what could have been done? And so I think that it's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there. But I think from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up. But I don't think that Israel has stated that they don't want the people to move back there afterward. The thing that I would try to do if I was Israel right now is I would just bulldoze something in the Negev. I would try to move people in there. I know that won't be the popular thing to do, but I think that that's a better option to do so that you can go in and finish the job.
So, I mean, there's so many things that are wrong there and so many ignorant things that are wrong there. I mean, Palestinians are some of the most educated lot in the world. Very highly educated, the highest number of doctorates and PhDs, I think, in the Arab world in general, and in the world in general, very high literacy rate, very high educational attainment. And he's talking about, well, if we build things up, I mean, it's hit the country he supports and the policies he supports of the nation he supports that have been destroying and demolishing those buildings while they're laughing and making TikTok videos. Yeah. So, how dare he actually make these kinds of statements that, if they only built up and focused on economic development, how are they meant to do economic development when they can't even get any, requisite amounts of food, water, materials into Gaza without Israel controlling the air, land, sea borders? Yeah,
and they're talking about a tunnel network as if it was some kind of just misguided enterprise, like it was some tunnel startup. They were just pouring all their money into this tunnel startup for no reason. If only they thought of doing other things. It's like, no, this was a military strategy which has actually proved highly effective against Israel, who tried to occupy Gaza and were consistently beaten by Hamas using these tunnels. Yeah. So this. The sanitized, it's sanitized evil. This is the way they talk.
It's like the United States can spend more than any other country on military, right? But if a nation that's actually beleaguered and is actually under occupation, if they spend on military, then God, how absolutely awful that is.
Well, it's like them. We're anti-nuclear bombs, I think we can say, but it's like America's qualms about any other country having nuclear bombs. Like they possibly can't. It's like you're the only ones that's ever used them. What are you talking about? What is this? Just hypocrisy. It's all hypocrisy, and it's the sanitization of evil in these kind of banal. Yeah, we'll just do this and do that and do that in like a tech bro speak. Yeah, which is just appalling. Yeah. Right. And I want to go on to talking about this, what the Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community said, because Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, he's the Caliph of the single largest Muslim community, the Ahmadiyya community, still a strong minority within Islam. But he said something which I think was really insightful and really important. So, I mean, shall I just read out the translation?
Yeah, sure.
So he said
this is a translation of the summary.
This is so it's not literally word for word, but it's I think it captures it. So he said that he's been appealing for prayers in light of the condition of the world and the Muslims in particular. People were of the opinion that the circumstances of the Palestinians would improve after the ceasefire was agreed. However, they are only worsening. The policies and schemes of the new president of the US have reached new heights of injustice, and he is now a threat to the whole world, not just to the US.
Well, the policies are, I think, is particularly what he said.
Yeah. So, and any reaction to just that before we move on?
Yeah, I think that's clearly what's happening. And the point is he's kind of demonstrating, people are just talking about the Middle East. Very few people are talking about the whole world at this point. And I think he's highlighting that, and that's very valuable to note.
Yeah. His Holiness prayed that Allah Almighty grants mercy to the Palestinians and the world in general. His Holiness, may Allah strengthen his hand, said that the Arab nations need to open their eyes and see that they cannot do anything without first uniting. If not, then they too will have to face great hardships ahead. Yes, there are voices being raised against these injustices, but the ones with power are silent and unwilling to listen to anyone. We must focus even more on prayer, for we have no power aside from prayer. And then he made an appeal for the Ahmadi Muslims who are being persecuted in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and prayed that Allah Almighty keeps everyone who's being wronged and persecuted under his protection, and may the world come to its senses. So anything from there before we analyze it in a bit more depth?
Well, I think the particular thing that I think is interesting is that he says that the Arab nations need to unite and they can't do anything without uniting. And that if they don't, then they're going to face great hardships. And he particularly focused on the the Arab leaders in what he was talking about.
Right. So there's a question here which people will ask, which is, the Sunnis and Shias haven't been united for centuries because they're so religiously divided. They can't be united. So the Caliph's guidance is not one which is realistic. What would you say to that?
I think that, religion doesn't divide people, even if there are religious differences. The thing that divides people is their egos and their desire to materially dominate other people. Those differences are often, and resources are often delineated along religious lines, but sometimes they're not. The Qataris and the Saudis have been each other's necks for decades. The royal families have, well-known quarrels and hostility between them.
Yeah.
And yet they share identical beliefs, So I don't think it's religion that actually is the cause of disunity in this case. It's the fact that they all seek political domination over each other, and they're not recognizing each other's rights over their legitimate interests.
Okay, so the Caliph here is saying that if they don't unite, then they're going to face great hardships. And if we were thinking about this, about how this can play out, and here's one scenario of how Trump's plan to put Israel first and to consistently serve Israel's interest is actually going to massively backfire against him, and it's going to cause turmoil in the Arab world. Because what he's saying, and it seems like he's serious about it, and it seems like this is a long-term plan.
Yeah.
So if this does continue through, what are they going to do? They're going to try and displace all the Palestinians.
Yeah, and the way they're going to do that, in my view, is, you see, what they did before is they bombed them.
Yeah.
But they didn't provide them an exit.
Yeah.
Now, the reality is a lot of Gazans might stay despite being bombed and having an exit.
Yeah.
But a lot of Gazans would leave potentially if they have the opportunity to leave to safety.
To Egypt, to Jordan, to other places.
To Jordan. So if they open up corridors and then they bomb them and they resume the bombing, then what's going to happen is they're going to, a lot of Gazans are going to leave, and that might actually trigger a flood of an exodus.
Yes.
From Gaza. And so that might actually be the trigger for exactly what...
For turmoil, because if you have 1 to 2 million Palestinians coming into these countries, it's going to be a huge upheaval for the domestic populations of these countries, and it's going to be seen as a betrayal by the Arab populations of those other countries of the Palestinians. You leaders, why have you betrayed the Palestinians by not supporting them, but simply accepting them and allowing their homelands to be destroyed? And once Gaza, falls to this, who's to say the same thing or a similar thing won't happen in the West Bank? And who's to say the plan of, Israel as its supposed fake homeland, the original homeland, which we've talked about at length before, isn't actually, done as a fait accompli much sooner than people expected.
Yeah.
This will actually potentially foster huge amounts of discord within those Arab countries. And, why don't you talk to us a bit about Jordan and Egypt and the potential ramifications?
What about Saudi?
there?
I mean, Mohammed bin Salman is on record for saying that he doesn't care about the Palestinian issue, but his people do. He said
Really?
that. Yes, he says, I don't care about the Palestinian issue, but my people do.
Yeah.
And the consequence of that will be is that he is in a precarious position.
Yes.
And he's going to be at risk of being overthrown. And the consequences of that, of the Saudi family,
right,
who have been... to set up, and all of the OPEC nations, right? If a large majority or a significant proportion of them get overthrown, and they turn on America in terms of selling their oil in dollars, for example,
then the petrodollar falls.
And the
petrodollar is this long-standing agreement that Saudi Arabia has that it will accept dollars for its oil, right? And it's already started to weaken, right, in recent years.
Well, in 2024, the agreement came to an end, right? A lot of people say that actually it will continue to sell oil in dollars. And a lot of people say that, well, it doesn't actually matter if they don't sell oil in dollars. But what would you say to that? Why does it matter that they sell oil in dollars?
Well, if we zoom out, what's happening in the global economy is that the Americans are able to print money and spend it on themselves and on other things in the world to support their interests, basically at will. Now, if any other country, if Zimbabwe does that, they have massive inflation because that money is kept domestically, right? It's kept domestically, which means that the value of money goes down and you go to an inflationary spiral, and you have... Why
is it only kept domestically? Just to spell it out for people?
Because no one else is buying those dollars. No one else is taking those dollars because they don't need the Zimbabwean dollars for anything else in their life. But people need American dollars to pay for oil. Right?
Yeah.
So American dollars are always desirable They're always being bought.
Yeah.
So that those American dollars can be absorbed into the rest of the global economy, and because they're being used for natural resources such as the petrodollar with oil, with Saudis backing.
So the inflationary effects of money printing for the United States are diluted
Yes.
across the world economy.
Yes.
So
Now,
as a result, they don't get hyperinflation like Zimbabwe by money printing.
yeah.
So if people stop buying dollars
And if they sell dollars
and
back,
if they sell dollars back,
right, for other currencies,
Yeah.
then all those dollars are going to re-enter the American economy, which is going to cause massive inflation, which is going to cause huge political, economic, and then political upheaval in America. So Trump thinks that maybe he thinks this is part of his deal. Maybe he thinks this is the cost of doing business. You have to have the Zionist backing.
Yeah.
And this is what he needs to make America great again. Or maybe he just much prefers the Israelis to the Palestinians and doesn't care about Palestinian rights. Either is very possible. Maybe both are, right?
Yeah.
But either way, if his agenda is truly to make America great again, this is going to potentially spectacularly backfire for him.
Yeah.
And the only antidote, really both for the Muslims and the Americans, is if the Arabs unite to resist this, to resist this outcome from happening.
From the beginning.
Yes.
To make sure it doesn't happen in the first place.
Yeah.
Because once it happens, Egypt, the leader of Egypt is...
Well, it's always precarious.
It's precarious. It's always precarious.
Yeah.
Jordan as well.
Jordan is even more precarious. Because he's felt to essentially be a Western stooge.
Yeah, proven by his firing of the Iranian missiles that went over his, or permission for America to fire them all from his territory.
So, the world is in a very precarious state, because if you then have the petrodollar going off, right? If you then have a political crisis, a further political crisis in America, we think we've been seeing political crises in the West.
Crises.
We have not seen them to the extent that what America does and other Western countries have done around the world, where you have coups, where you have massive true revolutions or revolutionary activity. That will, what will America do in that situation? What will the West do if they are facing a massive inflationary spiral, if they have huge political turmoil? How will they lash out? How will they act with other nations?
Well, the thing that soaks up more dollars than anything else is war. Right?
Yeah.
That's the thing that soaks up. They're going to need to spend
Yeah.
and burn that currency.
Yeah. Let's not give them too many ideas.
I think they've already got that idea.
Yes. Okay. So, one thing I'm thinking of how to, stop all this is for Elon Musk to do his job even better, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it. You're doing a great job, Elon. Do it even better and cut the funding to Israel. That could stop a lot of this. And if America stopped its support for Israel, they could actually end up shoring up their position in the world.
Yeah. I think actually there is a possibility America will turn on Israel. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but if it's a choice between Israel and all the Arab nations, it's possible Trump may in actual fact drop Israel.
Yes.
He's an unpredictable person, and anyone who thinks that, Trump is just easy to know and that he's definitely going to support Israel to the hilt, we have to remember something very important. Trump's only interested in one person's interest in reality.
Yeah.
And that's himself. Okay. He doesn't fundamentally care about anybody else. If Israel, in support of Israel, threatens him in a very material and serious way, and him from his base, which is the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants.
Yes.
There's a very significant possibility he will drop them for the wasps.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think there's a possibility that happens potentially in this administration. Maybe all of this plays out. Maybe there's a big backlash and then it happens. But fundamentally, there is... we have to think about a reversion to type. Christians throughout history have not been known for their great adoration of Jewish people, and they've actually persecuted them, a lot of the time. So this is actually, in a sense, a bit of an artificial unity, funded and supported by a huge number of dollars from the Israel lobby and shared interests in the Middle East. If those interests then are no longer there, if it's actually Israel as a liability rather than an asset, then the so-called Judeo-Christian unity, which was always a myth, is going to be exposed as a myth, and it's going to crumble.
And we're going to hear about the Christo-Islamic unity.
Yeah, maybe.
Suddenly we're going to start putting about the Christo-Islamic unity? It's like, what are you talking about?
Well, what we need is Abrahamic unity, if anything, and we need a unity across the whole world, because, God didn't just reveal the Abrahamic religions, he revealed, we believe, all religions originally, and all people are creation of God.
Yeah.
So it's only with that mentality and a recognition of the equal human rights of all people that you can actually have peace. Because when you recognize that, then you have to be just. And when you have real justice, then you have real lasting peace. That's always been the message of Islam. And that's the message that the Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has been, giving to all parliaments and, congresses throughout the world for the whole of his caliphate. And I think that's the message that the world really needs right now.